Adrian, bro, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Man, I'm glad to be here, man. I love what you're doing, and I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, for sure. I gotta shout you out real quick. Two things. So first, I need you to tell me where you were at yesterday because that looked like Justin Bieber's house or something, bro. What's going on?
Oh,
Yeah,
nah, it definitely wasn't, man. It's actually it's like this kind of like little, you call it McClay Gardens here in Tallahassee. So we actually had had to pre-record. We actually were in live. We're doing live service and we pre-record stuff as well.
nice.
For leading the Church of Engage, and so we had a pre-record. So yeah, man, we found our team found that spot. It did look
It's a
like B's
spot.
little estate, right? Yeah, it was a nice vibe yesterday. Went early too, because Tallahassee, man, it gets real hot real
Yes,
fast. So we were
sir.
up at like 8 a.m. So doing it, but it was fun though. Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. And then second, bro, I just gotta shout you out for your memes. What is that on Mondays? You got like meme Mondays?
Me Monday, man, dude.
Bro,
Yeah.
everybody listening to this, go follow my man. It is.
Hey,
I don't know if you
yeah.
ever. I'm open about always looking at who views my stories. So I don't know if you always see me on there, but bro, I look at all of them.
Dude, I appreciate that. I appreciate a lot. Dude, me Monday, yeah. It started off, man, just kind of like, it's funny, man. It's like it's me, my wife, and two of my closest friends. We're in a group, and literally our group text is called Ratchet Memes Club, is our group text. And so that's our group text. So we just were all, it's funny, we would share memes, whatever. And then I don't know, it was probably about a year and a half ago, maybe something like that. I just started saying, I'm gonna start posting these on Monday. We were thinking of some creative things, whatever. Like, and everybody like, "Did you love memes?" So just start doing that, right? So I was like, all right. So I started posting, and then it got to a point where like, oh, I'll try it, whatever. But dude, it's like if I don't post, I mean, it'll be like I
Bro.
can't tell you. Like, because sometimes you go through your day. It's like 10
Yeah.
a.m. It's like 10 p.m. I've got people. It's like without fail. I mean, dude, there's multiple people my DMs like, dude, we're not getting me
Where are they
Monday. Like,
at?
what's going on? Yeah. So I just created a monster. Like, I don't think I could ever stop it. Like, I think the day it
You
happens,
can't,
like,
bro. Listen,
yeah.
listen. I'm the supporter over here. Listen, if you start a Patreon, bro, I got you.
Hey, they have it's funny with the Me Monday now. It's like it gets to a point now. It's always funny, man, because even when you do it, you never. I just made a decision one time, like I'm just gonna post, I'm gonna do my thing, and some people are gonna get upset, dude. I'm telling you, the level of things, man. Like people will like, cause like I'm in both worlds. I'm an
Yeah, yeah.
entrepreneur, man. I pass, so you got people. So I try to do my best to pass, like blurring things out. I do all that stuff like that, right? Yeah, I get it, but it's like, man, one time, I'm saying the biggest ones, dude. I posted something about Lizzo, dude. It was like, yo, the Lizzo, they're like the beehive. Like they came out of the
Yeah, bro.
woodworks. I was like,
Believe
dude,
it.
I wasn't even saying anything like, you know what I'm saying? Like bad about them. They were like, her music, your body shaming. I'm like, it has nothing to do with
Just
her body.
professional.
Yeah. I was just talking. I think the meme said something like, like talking about like Lizzo's music, like just like the type of people she sings to, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
dude? And
yeah.
it's like, no, and the thing is, like, people got really hurt because I think, like, the
Really?
people who responded to me, honestly, man, were like, oh, dude, that's you. Like you're really, because like, and you
Yeah.
love her. So I'm like, is it true? So anyway,
Right.
but it's fun. My wife,
Love it.
my wife tempers me because there's certain memes she's like, you cannot
Yeah,
post
don't
that.
put that
So,
one
but anyway,
up.
it's all
No,
good though.
listen, keep it up, bro. Keep it up. And you mentioned something there too, having to filter. And I want to talk specifically, obviously about authenticity today. And
Yeah.
your pastor. And I think one thing I thought about in preparation for this podcast is how valuable authenticity is for pastors. And I think I'm 27, so I haven't been around forever, but I feel like our generation is really we pick up on authenticity really quickly. And especially if you're a pastor and you're not authentic, I feel like you don't have a great chance with getting your message across to
Mhm.
millennials or whatever generation that's younger than us. I can't ever remember it. But anyways, what do you think the importance is about being a pastor that's authenticity over everything? And then how do we even start?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I think that one of the things is that I think that, and I agree with you, this generation, again, like millennials to Gen Z, they pick up, they understand that, they really do get a good feel. And But I think part of it is just authenticity. I think first of all, you have to define it, right? Because see, one of the problems I say with millennials and Gen Z is that how authenticity is kind of defined in that generation. It's like, hey, reach deep within, whatever you pull out, that's what you are, right? So like, hey, I was if if I want to be, some juggling contortionist, who, likes clowns or whatever, that's who I am. And you pull it out and I'm, whatever, right? But I tell people that's not authentic. Like I could say all day, well, within me, I'm a like horse jockey. Well, like I'm like, what I'm saying? I'm 6'6", I'm a big dude. Like, I'm not gonna be a horse jockey or a successful one, you know what I'm saying? And so I tell people like authenticity. So how I define authenticity is this: it's self-awareness and resilience to remain self-aware.
Yeah.
It's coming to the reality of who you are and then having a toughness to actually stay the course. Because we were talking about it pre-pod, like with social and with from TikTok to IG to everybody, you're always looking at everybody else, right? You're always playing comparison. You're always wondering, man, you're at the house, I'm here in Tallahassee, you're in Dayton, then we look at somebody we went to high school with, they're in the visa right now. We're like, yo, dude, what am I doing with my life, right?
Yeah.
And you start to compare and you do those things. And what happens is so that's why the resilience comes, the resilience to remain you remain self-aware. And so I think it's incredibly important. I think again, as a pastor, I think it's the heart of the gospel. I think at the heart of it, it's like, because I believe that if you're not being who you've been hardwired to be, then what you're doing is that there's idolatry that's there. Then if you're not being who you are, then there's other things that you're doing in order to get the approval of man or to get significance or influence or whatever. And so I think that's the power of it. I mean, again, you look at it, I mean, the Apostle Paul writes, like, in my weakness, Christ is made strong. He's literally saying, in my brokenness and who I really am, he's like, this is the power. And so that's just kind of, man, where I wanted to be in it all. I say from a pastoral standpoint, man, it really just came from a fact of, I'm a guy, probably Proverbs 24, one of my favorite Proverbs, but there's this passage, I think it's Proverbs 24, where it talks about how you looked to the field of a man's house and we saw the field growing. And then when you look at the field and it was growing, here's ultimately what it said. It said that he said, man, I looked and I learned a lesson. He says, I looked and I learned a lesson. And what made that really powerful is the fact that, like, I just used to look at pastors and people before who just, I think many times when I got behind the scenes, right, and I got to go to the green rooms and stuff like that, you're like, oh, dude, I was like very disappointed. I'm like, oh, you're not that way. I mean, they're like super holy, but then I'm like, yo, man, like you like, oh, I used to be so ashamed to listen to hip hop. I'm like, oh, these dudes don't listen to hip hop. So, I'm just listening straight up Israel or like, or whatever, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh no. And so I realized like I wasn't gonna be that type of guy. Like I am who I am. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm just gonna do that. And I think that's led to, God has used it by his grace to, we've impacted a lot of people. And I've been able to be a part of that just because, again, in the depths of my soul, man, I just want to be, I say I always tell our congregation all the time, the same Bible that I teach to you from has to work for me. So it ain't like I'm so that's kind of where it comes from.
Oh yeah, without question. I think, whether you're a pastor or whether you're a business leader or whoever you are, I think we have to learn to develop that, because I think people, if you're looking to, whether you're looking to sell something, whether you're looking to, you have a message and you want to get it across, it's always better to be the authentic version of yourself. And what I think of is humans respond to humans, you know what I mean? And I actually talked to Beck about this last night, because she put something on IG, my wife, just about how hard it's been post labor. And she's like, is this too much? Is this too much information? Do I sound dramatic? And I'm like, what you don't understand is people on the internet are looking for real people, because there's so many people that aren't, authentic, and, they're trying to flex or whatever they're trying to do. But if there's somebody that's real, and like you talked about, showcases your brokenness, and how you're dealing with that brokenness, people respond to that. And so I think it's critical, again, whoever you are, to find that. And as you find that, you'll see that people respond to that way more than they respond to you posting, flexing, you know what I mean? Because that's not relatable. And most of the time people know that's not, you know what I mean? Like people can go out and, whether it's family or friends, and know that it's not you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying you're right. You're like, oh man, you got a picture of all this money. I'm like, dude, like I just saw you. Like you're a barista at Starbucks. Like unless you're just like, like unless you're pushing dope out the back door. Like I know you're not making that type of money, right? And so no, but I'm with you. But I think it's what's going to happen, man. And I think why I'm really passionate about this subject, because just like you, again, the face space matters a ton to you and the business space. I'm in both. I'm bivocational. And so that's another thing of being authentic. People said I couldn't do it. They said, you can't do both. You got to pick one or the other, and you're not going to grow a church, you're not going to grow a church, and you're not going to do this. And I think that's one of the secrets to what we do, this authenticity part, because I am who I am, right? And have to stay the course. Like, if I just only did pastoral ministry, could I grow? Could I have grown? I mean, our church has grown wildly. Could it be bigger? Probably. I'm a Black man in the South. Our church is literally ethnically split down the middle and politically split down all this stuff. And it's just who I am, but it bleeds, it comes out of those things. And I think that when you really lead out of that place of authenticity, I believe fruits produce. Now, what I try to tell people is this: most people, I'm not gonna tell we're not responsible for how much of the fruit we actually produce or what the result, how much of the world we get, right? But we are responsible for it. We will have a world, and our job is just to be faithful to do what you do, and how it grows, that's not on you. And so that's what I've tried to do, man. And honestly, people said we would never get a church over 200 people, and we have a church, again, that even went over the few thousand in COVID, and I mean, just all types of stuff in a business, and that stuff grew. And it's just, honestly, I feel the other day, I'm just authentically who I am, but it's a fight every single day to do it. Cause man, listen, I'm like, here, I get it. I want to flex. I want people to think I'm more than what I am. I'm never satisfied with where I am. I want more. So I really get where people come from, but it's just a fight every day to do that. But I think that's where the power, that's where the superpower is.
Yeah, and I think too, a lot of people don't even do it intentionally. You know what I mean? I can look back on experiences to where I was maybe leading a team, you know what I mean, or speaking, and I was like, I'm going to be speaking. I need to be the hype guy. You know what I mean? I need to be my favorite version of whatever my favorite public speaker is. And then I get up there, and then whether it's Beck, you know what I mean, or one of my friends like, bro, what was that? That wasn't you. And or whether you're trying to be funny and you're not a funny person, it's like, you don't have to be everything. You know what I mean? Your authentic self doesn't look like everything, because nobody's perfect and nobody has every strength. And so as you develop authenticity with only your strengths, then, you see a lot of growth. But opposed to, thinking that you have to change all your weaknesses and make yourself the hype guy in the room, if you're not typically a charismatic guy, or if you're not, generally funny and you try to force it, people read it, and again, they just won't respond to it. So it's way better to be the person that just doubles down on that strength. Everybody has a strength. So if you're somebody that's just a really great leader logistically and knows how to get everything done from A, B, and C, be that guy. And that's all you have to be. And as long as it's your authentic self, people will listen.
No, and to speak to that, I mean, that was one of the things I struggled with early on. It's on this journey, even when we started Engage. It's like our church, we started, and man, because of my fear, here's what happened. As a Black man in the South, here's the thing: I didn't grow up going to church at all. I became a Jesus follower at 19, but my great grandfather and my grandfather were both pastors, right? And they were preachers. So like, it's in my bones. So like, I tell people, it doesn't matter, man. I can be talking to you about it doesn't matter what the subject is. At some point, I tell people, I'm going to call people to repentance. I tell people, pretty much all my sermons come to this: we all suck and Jesus is awesome. We all need to repent. Like, that's pretty much where it comes to. But my point is saying this: early on, dude, I used to try to quote, I feel like I had to quote like Spurgeon and Keller and Luther and be like this teacher, because I didn't want people, honestly, as a Black man, to dismiss me as I wasn't like well trained or educated. But I'm like, and I was being something for other people. And so like, this is just who I am, man. Like, though those guys' Reformed theology shaped me in a real way. But I also, this charismatic, I got saved in a charismatic expression. It shaped me in a real way. And this is just who I am. So when I was able to release that, dude, a lot of freedom and a lot of growth began to happen. So I'm like, I don't have to quote a bunch of dead white guys to actually prove to you that I'm actually faithful and I love Jesus. And I don't have to say gospel 45 times in a sermon. It makes me like I'm faithful to the gospel, dude. You preach. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think so many times people do that to fit in certain circles and to fit in certain groups, and it's suffocating the people, man. Versus really like, make the main things the main things.
Well, because you're not getting the one demographic because you're not being true to yourself, and then you're not getting the other demographic because you're not being that person. You know what I mean? And so this is actually another thing I talked to Beck a little bit ago about, but again, going back to entrepreneurship or whatever it is, there's a market for everybody, and there's a market for your authentic self, whether you are whatever you are. I won't name the channel. I don't even think I know the channel, but it was everybody's seen them. It's like kind of a cringy family funny thing. And when I watch it, I just cringe. I'm like, this isn't funny at all. But guess what? They got like millions of views because there's a market for it. You know what I mean? Or whether you're into whatever weird, thing you're into, there's a market for it if you're authentic. And you're never going to grow to your full potential if you're not being that authentic self. And so I think with you, it's like, man, you got authentic, then people, things grow. Anytime in business when you get authentic about your truest self, things flourish. But they'll die if you're catering to everybody. It's the same thing if you're creating content. You know what I mean? If I'm having a podcast and I'm talking about if I'm talking about hunting, you know what I mean? I've never hunted in my life. So if I talk about hunting, number one, it's not going to be authentic. And number two, if I'm talking about, marketing the next time, I'm not going to have a great demographic. But as I pinpoint what I'm authentic about and who Isaiah is as a person, then it'll go from there.
Yeah, man. No, you're spot on. And I think you have to also, I think another part to take a little step deeper down there is that understanding why are you actually doing it. I really try to tell people all the time, you got to get to the basement, right? I kind of give the story of like growing up as a kid, and this gets to like the motives, right? Growing up as a kid, I know you're in Dayton, I grew up in Akron. And so like growing up, man, we had basements. I live here in Florida. If you have a basement in Florida, like you're in a swamp, you know what I'm saying? So you don't really have basements down here in Florida, but growing up in Akron, our first house we lived in, dude, I used to be freaked out of the basement, right? Because scary movies, you know what I'm saying? So I used to be like, oh, dude, like my mom was sitting there, and we had like that light, the one light with the upholstery in the middle of the basement. So you're like, I'm definitely gonna die as soon as I pull it, like, freaking Leatherface is right there, like cranking the chainsaw about to kill me. And here's the thing, and I used to run in and run out and be quick. But then, as you get older, you're like, oh, we got a finished basement. I was like, oh, dude, it's like an apartment, right? And so I fell in love with being in the basement. Point of why I say that is that leaders have to get to the basement of their motives and intentions. Like, and the way you do that is you got to ask yourself why. And because it goes to what you were just saying earlier. If you are just trying to get into a certain, let's say it is your true self, but are you doing that to actually help people? Or are you doing that because, hey, I want 5,000, 20,000, a million followers? I want to do this. And now that's okay. There's nothing wrong with having those. But if your motivation is that there's going to be what you'll do, you may get a burst, but you won't stay your authentic self, because then you'll just I got to keep doing this to keep the crowd.
Yeah.
And when you have to pivot and switch, you get new revelation for something new, you won't do it. So
no, yeah, it's valuable. It's valuable. So maybe switching, you talked about, leadership, and that was a great point in regards to leadership and kind of knowing your why and then moving from your why. In leadership, how important is it with having a team being around you? You know what I mean? Obviously you got your team over there and they're around you all the time. I think for leaders, we got to make sure that we're, nobody's perfect, but we got to be consistent. You know what I mean? And so maybe just talk about the importance of being a consistent, leader that dwells on their authenticity.
Yeah, man. I mean, I do. I have in the business I run and in the church space, man, I have an incredible team. And one of the things they've had to walk with me through, especially early on, man, is that, I've kind of shared with it a lot about the journey I've had with mental health, is that, really struggling with, depression, like pretty much all my life. And they've had to see me, I have like pretty much like a lot of characteristics of somebody who's bipolar, I have the traits of it. Again, a lot of entrepreneurs actually do. You have the wave. And so they've had that ride me through the wave. Here's the point of why I say that is that as a leader, you're going to make mistakes. But one of the most important things you can do is when you do make mistakes, when you're not, whatever, is just be honest and own those. You know what I'm saying? The second thing as a leader, you have to have you can't bleed. And that's why I worry a little bit coming up, man, with the next generations, right? Of that you bleed on, like, if you're leading, you bleed on everybody, right? In the name of being authentic or emotion, whatever. No, you need to have a container. I tell people you need to have a container to bleed. You need to have 2 or 3 friends or some people on your staff who, okay, they're trusted, they get you, right? And they'll push on you. They'll give you room, but they'll push on you as well. You can't do that to everybody. And that's one of the things I had to learn, because in the name of being authentic, trying to do that, I would sometimes bleed everywhere, and that wasn't healthy. You know what I'm saying? It's just not, because that's not their burden to carry. So now what I've done, I've been able to insulate myself with the people who know me and and I've also had the practices of learning how to do that. And so the point is that as a leader, you got to be consistent. You got to really live out what you're trying to say, but also when you make mistakes, own those mistakes. It's okay. Like own them. Like, hey man, I messed up. It's okay. But hey, here's how we're gonna go get better. Because here's what happens. Why we don't own them, say our anxiety put listen, it's I mean, again, from a Jesus context, it's all idolatry. It's all we want everybody to worship us. So that's why we won't
Yeah.
admit our mistakes or our anxiety pushes us up. I can't say I was wrong. No, 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 I can't say that. I'm like, dude, it's okay. Like they all saw you messed up. Just say it. Like it's okay. And so I think that's super important because we don't see it in culture today. I mean, think about it right now. I mean, like, dude, people will literally get caught. I mean, you have politicians doing stuff obvious, and then they'll literally. I mean, it's noted for. Oh, I didn't do that. I'm like, fam, we saw you. Like, dude, we
You
saw
did.
you on the video, two IDs next to you, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you like? I'm like, what are we talking about? But I think we're living in that world, man. And let me just say this, and and this may take us down a whole road that we may not want to go, but it's this idea though, is that why I think this is so important about authenticity, because I think where the world's going. If you look at right now with NFTs and you look at where, with augment, with AR and VR, like that's where the world's going. And
Yeah.
we're going to have more access to not be authentic. We're going to have more access to not be authentic. And that's the part for me where I feel like one of my, that's why I'm put on this planet, is to unlock authenticity. And that's why I feel like it's such a time as this that I was put here to actually help and do that, because I think where the world's going to go, because people are going to be able to build whatever they want to. I mean, I tell people, like, what is it going to look like? I'm like, just go watch Ready Player One. That is exactly what, like, I don't care anybody, that's where we're going. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
now, and especially, how this is like in the church, in the church world, Chief, it's like, I mean, everybody in the church world is like, oh, like technology, this. I'm like, listen, it's coming. It's like we're not stopping this.
Yeah.
So
Whether
either
you
we need
like
to
it or not.
yeah, whether you like it or not. So how are we going to figure out, how do we how do we dial into this? How do we lean into this? How do we make this thing work? So
Yeah, no, that's great. It's a great point, and learning to adapt to that, because authenticity might look a little bit different, but it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be critical in a world to where literally, I think I heard Gary Vee talk about it one time, but it's like this is real life, you know what I mean? But your
yeah,
actual real life isn't in some cases, and so real valuable. And I think as leaders too, especially, we just always got to bring it back. I'm going to probably butcher this, but I think it's John Maxwell that talks about how people would rather follow a leader that's always real than one that's always right. And I think in our mistakes and in our weaknesses.
no, it's Craig.
Is it Craig? Okay, I was like,
It's
it was
my
one of
bad.
the two.
It's Craig. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's Craig.
yeah,
No, yeah, dude. No, that leadership podcast. You talk about marketing. Craig gets that thing in the back of your head. He says it all the time. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Keep
Every
going.
time, bro. Every time, yeah. And so it's valuable to always remember that. But I appreciate you coming on.